Good morning, everyone. Good day to you all. Welcome to our webinar today. We're delighted that you could join us. We're going to be talking all about social media programs for B2B. We're focusing really on the B2B sector today. So, thank you very, very much for coming in today and joining us as we talk about social media programs for exporters to help you grow export sales, brand, and business into international markets and including on your domestic market. So while we're all still logging in and getting ready, I thought I'd just sort of start by introducing ourselves. If I can get my mouse to work. Here we go. So lovely to meet you all. Today I'm being joined by Joelle Lazzarotto, our Senior Online Marketing Manager. She's going to walk you through some of the major strategies that companies can adopt when they're looking at social media strategies and the different platforms for that. Giving you lots of tips and takeaways and real great knowledge and experience. I'm also very happy to be joined by Andrew Lawler, Online Business Development Manager. He is sitting in our office, usually based in Michigan and covers the Midwest and the Central States. Delighted that Andrew can be here. He has a huge experience, knowledge for companies looking to go internationally and even to build their domestic websites as well. Both on website localization and in the online marketing field. Myself, my name is Susanna, and I'm Chief Content Officer here at IBT Online. As I said, we're delighted to have you all join us today. A quick word then perhaps just on who we are as a company. IBT Online. IBT actually stands for International Business and Technology. So we are very much focused on the online world. We provide websites and online marketing for companies. That's our raison d'etre. We've been around for quite a while, and we were very, very proud to have won the President's E Award recently for services for U.S. companies to making a significant contribution to the expansion of U.S. exports. There you go. So we're very pleased about that. We have offices in Europe and the US, now just recently opened up in Canada as well, and other places too. And as you can see, we've won a couple of awards, which we're very proud of. But I want you also to note that we have a lot of resources on our website for exporters that you can download for free. Webinars like this one, also live streaming events, ebooks, infographics, all those kind of things, looking at the online world by country, by program, by events, by platforms. So do browse around and download things when you want. We have over the years developed something called the Online Global Programs and rolled this out across, for example, the United States markets, and there are something like 26 or 27 states now in the US that have these online global programs. These are tailored to mid-cap companies who are looking to grow their businesses using online tools like websites, like online marketing. A lot of those states have grant funding for these programs. So if you're interested in the grants on the online global programs, we will be asking you this later. Let us know. We can circle back, give you information on that. But one of the things I wanted to highlight in this long list of things about how the program, the online global programs help you, they're all about growing. They're all about growing your top line. That's what websites and online marketing do. They grow your sales. They're there to grow, for lead generation, for helping distributors, for getting more views, brand recognition, brand authority. It's all about the top line, and that's what we're here to help with today. So on today's agenda, we're going to be first talking a little bit about, how you're reaching your clients, your prospects, anywhere and anytime. That's going to be presented by Andrew, who's going to walk us through that, putting that big picture stuff on and then before we can drill down, really giving you the big parameters and setting the stage. Then I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about the buyer persona and the buyer's journey, as it's called. What does that mean? And especially for international markets, what does that mean? How important is it? Do you have to do it for your website and your social media agenda? Those sort of questions. Then Andrew's going to jump back on talking about the international social media channels. Which ones are they? How do they differ? What are the big platforms to look at? And Joelle's going to round out with a section all about social media strategies. And again, those are your top tips, your a lot of takeaways in all of those sections. We hope to make this as information-packed, rich as possible. We have left time at the end of the close for questions, so drop your questions into the chat box. We're curating questions, and I'll be fielding questions at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand right over to Andrew and to talk us through about how to reach your clients anywhere, anytime, any place. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you to all those that are attending today. Ultimately, we're going to be starting off this presentation all about social media and building a global presence with social media by looking at the big picture, as Susanna mentioned. So this is going to show a lot of statistics, a lot of what we're seeing in the world at the moment, and what we can learn from it. So going on to the next slide, we can see what the business priorities here are for a lot of the exporters that we work with on a daily basis. Some of the things that we hear pretty frequently are things like looking after your employees, managing cost and cash flow, maintaining supply chains is absolutely massive at the moment. And also, of course, the last one is going to be generating sales, exports, and business. Ultimately today, sales is the name of the game, and we're here to speak to effective international online best practices that can help exporters continue to generate more sales and more revenue for the company to combat the above three challenges. So when it comes to things like supply chain issues and supply chain demand, of course, these programs and building this online presence is in a process to help alleviate some of these other challenges that you see around your company. So looking at kind of a global overview of internet use, some of the key percentages that we can look here are on the online world. Out of about 7.9 billion people on the earth at the moment, there's about 4.9 billion that access the internet on a daily basis. It's a pretty large number, and in a few slides we'll share how that number has been increasing. And even better, there's been 4.6 billion who leverage social media platforms. So of the 4.9 billion that use the internet, 4.6 billion use social media. That means about 58% of the world population is out there using social media platforms on a daily basis to help grow their own brand, their company's brand, and help buy new products on a daily basis. And as we see on the next slide, we can see exactly how social media has grown over the past few years. We can see that this chart here is an annual percentage growth year to year of social media users around the globe. So back in 2012, there were about 1.4 billion global social media users. And because of what we see on average, about 10% increase year to year for social media users, we're now sitting at about 4.6 billion. So taking what we know and what we see, in 2023, there's going to be about 5 billion users, which is just incredible growth, and I think that it's not going to stop it, anytime soon. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that have contributed to this, pandemic being one of them, but we're continuing to see a large growth and a large flocking to social media platforms to help grow their company's business. And then, these next few slides here, we're going to be going through a lot of statistics that we think are very key to B2B content marketeers, and how marketers and B2B platforms are able to take advantage of the online world. Ultimately, we see that social media is the top distribution method for B2B content marketers, and 89% of them use social tools on a regular basis to do so. On the next slide, we see that the number 83% show an ongoing prevalence of social media for B2B companies. So the 83% of B2B content marketers are using social media ads to promote their posts. So not only are they using organic traffic to try and connect with their target audiences, their buyer persona, as Susanna will mention a little bit later, but they're also paying money. 83% of companies are paying money to get in front of their audience, using things like Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, Google ads, to be in front of their audience. And this number has skyrocketed from 2020, back when it was 60%. So over the last 2 years, it's increased at 23% from that time. So the word's getting out, and obviously it's a lot more effective when you're paying money to get in front of your audiences on social media platforms. And according to eMarketer on this slide here, we see that U.S. businesses will spend an estimated of $2 billion this year alone just in LinkedIn ads. And we'll see in the next year in 2023 that this is going to increase to about 2.3 billion. Businesses are spending a lot more money to get in front of their target audiences, and the research shows that the businesses are making purchases from social media platforms and to continue to grow their business. In this next one, again, going back to Hootsuite, it's estimated that 80% of all B2B sales and interactions will occur on digital channels by 2025. I mean, this is a very impressive number. Again, this speaks to the amount of increase we're seeing around the board when it comes to social media. And by that time, e-commerce buying on the social media platforms in a B2B way is going to be highly efficient, highly effective, and obviously it's predicted that pretty much everyone's going to be doing so by that time. And it's due to the rapid increase of everybody being on social media to understand and research the products. Ultimately, why do exporters need localized websites and social media marketing? Well, the world is online. And all the statistics that we've seen above, underline the importance of the online world and the use of social media for B2B exporters. Yeah, and just going along, a social media strategy is used in tandem with your other marketing efforts to effectively build brand awareness, connect with your audience where they want to be found, and ultimately growing your sales as a company. Here we see an interesting chart of what we see B2B decision makers using social media for, and how frequently they're using these different platforms to make a decision. About 59% of B2B decision makers are looking at YouTube videos or looking at YouTube channels to understand if this is the right product for them. Obviously, video is a large, a very massive promotional tool for B2B companies to showcase their products or to showcase their services. And this ultimately tells you that if you don't have a presence on YouTube, whether it's a channel or a few videos talking about your services, you might be invisible to them. And the list goes on. 48% are using Facebook. You'll see 33% using LinkedIn. You also see a few other notable social media platforms, but it's ultimately driven by your audience. Here, we'll look at the effects of social media, but also looking at lead generation opportunities. To at the end of the day, what does everybody want? It's return on investment. And this chart here shows how Marketeers' main goals are driven by certain objectives when building a social media strategy. So here we see about 70% of these marketeers' main goal is to build a brand awareness for their company. Maybe this is for domestic, but also for a global brand awareness, while only 59% of them are building these social media strategies for sales and lead generation. So they're just some interesting numbers here, and shows kind of the whole picture of why marketeers are getting more involved in this world. And lastly, just to wrap up this general section, we have a case study here. Advanced Super Abrasives, one of our B2B companies that is now utilizing social media in tandem with their localized websites. For them, they've built social media platform or programs within Mexico, and utilizing things like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. And here you can see kind of the differences in posts between each of them. And the interactions that they garner from the audiences that they're promoting. You'll see that each of these have sponsored next to them, which means that they are sponsored posts or paid posts. They are advertisements to the audiences to make sure that they are in front of the right individuals. So here's a couple of examples. It's a dedicated Mexico web page and social media page, and an effective way to get in front of your audiences, not only in the U.S. but in this example in Mexico. So I know Susanna's going to be sharing a poll here, but afterwards we'll be passing over to Joelle to speak to the buyer persona, the buyer journey.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I just want to launch a quick poll just to ask you all if you're already using social media. Are you using social media? Is your company using social media actively to grow your business? And are you doing it all the time? Are you doing it domestically, internationally, everywhere, or only domestically? Or are you still thinking about it? And I want to first of all to say major thank you. Virtually all of you have voted already, so you're quick on the clicker there. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Give you a little bit of background, of feedback on that poll. About half of you are using social media domestically only, and about a fifth of you are using it internationally as well as domestically. And there's a very, very small minority of companies who are looking at, so thinking about it. But I appreciate that you've all responded to that poll. I'm going to close the poll now, and then we're going to get back to our slide deck. What is a buyer persona? What is a buyer persona in international lines? How do you get those, and how do you just a quick interruption though. I think there's at least half a dozen of you have asked the same thing. Yes, you will be getting a copy of this recording in your inbox on Monday. So all those stats that Andrew went through and the big picture stuff, yes, you will be getting it all. And there's one of you who've actually said, wow, yes, indeed, Andrew, wow. So remember those numbers, sort of nearly 8 billion of us on the planet already, nearly 5 billion are using the internet every day, 4.5 billion on social media. So there you go. Now let's talk about a buyer persona. So what is a buyer persona and how do you figure it out? You know, what can you include? You can include any kind of attributes that might be important to that buyer persona, the languages, what they do in their spare time. You know, it's all about, it's sort of getting together a sort of semi-fictional, but also based on real data persona. And you can have, you know, your lead personas and all kinds of different personas that you want to attract and use for your social media. How do you figure it out? One of the best ways is to analyze your website and your social and media analytics. Really dig down deep into the Google Analytics, the consoles, and the data analysis. The data here is really, really key in figuring out where your buyer persona is, how they're coming to you, what they're doing there, and so on. I think also just sit down with your sales and marketing team. They know who their people are, who their prospective buyers are. Just sit down and make careful notes. But I think what's important as well is what I call lather, rinse, repeat. Do it again and again. Refresh it regularly to make sure that you're still on track and on the right one. Defining a buyer persona, then, you know, it's a little. There are two things that you've got to remember. There's your ideal corporate, which is a corporation. So if you're a company, who do you sell to? You're selling to a company. You know, who's my prospective buyer? That company. But you're actually selling to a person. So I want to distinguish that ideal corporate profile from the buyer persona. The buyer persona, you always sell to a person in the end. So it's the buyer persona that you're trying to engage with. And social media engages with a person, not the company. So you first say, what is the ideal corporate profile for my business? And within that, who is the right buyer personas, the decision makers who can actually say, yes, request a quote, please. Yes, I'll buy that. And then figure out from their point of view, not your point of view, but their point of view, what are their goals? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? Where are they getting information from? How can you help them with any of those issues that they have? Then, as there's a couple of things to note. Buyer personas do change over time, and that the international buyer persona might be different from your domestic buyer persona. I'll give you some examples of this, but in terms of social media, I mean, just as an example of how you would look in terms of social media and looking at your buyer persona, drilling down and saying, okay, I really, really want to, I know that my buyer personas are teachers, for example, in this case. I'm going to do a little campaign. I'm really focusing in on primary school teachers because it's Easter time, and I know that that's important for them, and I have them to sell these products. So I'm really drilling down, and I'm making something very specific, customer-centric, and localized. Because everything on the web is always customer-centric, viewer-centric for that. So, creating a little blog around that, and very, very precise saying, I'm targeting primary school teachers in Germany and the UK at Easter time. So it's very focused. Here's some more examples of sort of a buyer persona and what they might be. So in this side of it, In what way are your buyer personas different internationally from domestically? That's one of the key things you're going to have to ask if you're looking at an international strategy. Could there be multiple buyer personas? Our distributors are in fact a type of buyer persona. Since you're trying to attract new distributors, then you can define them as a buyer persona. And how do they interact with you? Do they go online? In what way do they go online? Where are they online? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they in WhatsApp? Are they on WeChat? And in what way is that buyer's journey different? We'll talk about that too in a moment. I wanted to share this example, the screenshot from L'Oreal, the hair company. They do shampoo and things, and this is their U.S. website. And it's emblematic of these lots of women there. They're very much empowered women. They're decision makers on the top floor of a business suite, all interacting, all on the computer, all with great hair. So that's their US website. And they've tweaked it just in a subtle sort of way for other markets. If you look now, for example, at Brazil, just a tiny bit different. It's a little bit more relaxed, a bit more Brazil. Girls, the women still have beautiful hair because it's L'Oreal, but it's more relaxed. It is a less formal office environment, and something that a Brazil person might say, hey, that looks just like Rio, or whatever. And in Mexico, it's again a little bit different. Here in Mexico, it's also less formal, but it's a business environment. Interestingly, it's the only one with a man or two men in the image. So again, they've just slightly tweaked that buyer persona image that they have on this as an example here. So again, this is not a big radical change, but it's just making sure that you're absolutely focused on who your buyer persona is in each case. Once you've identified that buyer persona, you need to identify the buyer's journey. Where are they on that journey? Are they still shopping around, thinking about what they need? Have they considered other things? Are they looking at, for example, at competitors? Are they comparing you against the other one? Have they actually made a decision? So where are they on that? And that wheel, this sort of classic HubSpot flywheel, you attract, engage, and delight thing, using that buyer's journey and where are they, and you will interact with them at different times in different ways. If you're still at the awareness stage, then you want to have a different type of social media strategy than if you're at the consideration phase at this decision stage. Joelle will address these things more. One of the key things to do is called content mapping for that buyer's journey. So figuring out where they are and then what content you need for that buyer's journey, and that map that intersects as well, so that they are pulled from the awareness to the consideration to the decision stage. So the awareness might be the challenges, and I might write some content about your challenges or the pain points that your prospective buyer feels. Then you might say, okay, then the consideration fields, you might get more information about your services or your product, where they're considering things and so on. So each content has a very specific purpose and a very specific target audience, which is the buyer persona. So again, just sort of mapping that journey. Again, as I said, there's different types of content for the different types of stages of that journey. And you can get different feedback from each kind. So you need to make sure that you have content for each of those stages as you go along. And you can see that they're all quite different. Demos and free trials and even quotes occur at the decision stage. If you give that at the awareness stage, it might put someone off. I'm only just figuring things out. I'm not sure what product I need, and you're already pushing a quote on me. It feels too harsh. So make sure that you're putting the right strategy, the right content at the right stage. One thing about content mapping, reuse. So it's not only about endlessly creating new content. You can reuse things. This is an example of, for example, taking a blog, then turning it into an infographic. It's the same topic, social media in Mexico. We happen to create a blog on it. Using that blog, we can then make an infographic on it. So it's not always recreating the same thing. Different channels as well. One occurs on a search engine, the other we can push out on social media. So one topic, different formats, different channels. So that's a way of reusing existing content so you don't always have to reuse it. I wanted to bring out also this point about localization. When you're looking at your website and also about your social media, you can look closely at whether Google or the platform considers you relevant for that market. This is an example of that. Here in this example, this happens to be sort of a B2B website which we built for Australia. Does Google think it's relevant for Australia? Definitely. When you look at the sessions on the side, 3,700 of them, 3,600 of them come from Australia and New Zealand. The vast majority. The next one down is 218 for the USA. So Google is saying this is extremely relevant for that. And that's how you can make sure that the content you're producing is relevant and localized for your buyer personas. An example of how buyer personas can be different in different markets. This is an example of some social media we did for a company. Very, very similar posts, we have to admit. Same imagery. One was for the UK, one was for Mexico. Obviously, it's in Spanish, and slightly different way. We were very pleased with our UK response. 1,000 engagements. Fantastic. We got some engagements there from the first. We got one comment, 3 shares. Then we ran exactly the same thing at the same time in Mexico. We got over 20,000 engagements. A very different buyer persona reaction. So the engagement level, very different between the UK and Mexico. What's interesting is to drill down one step further and say, okay, that's the vanity metrics. Now, what about the conversions? And here we see that, in fact, the conversions, which in this case is the where to buy, that's the yellow and the green bars, are almost the same between the UK and Mexico. The vanity ones, the blue and the red, are much higher. So the engagement is much higher, the conversions are about the same. So we know that it takes roughly 5 times the level of engagement to get the same level of conversions in Mexico than it is the UK. An example of a different type of buyer persona, different markets. So there you go. These are all things that we do in our localized website and online global programs. And I'm just going to have one last poll before I hand back to Andrew. And just sort of say, if any of you are interested in learning about these online global programs, building websites or online marketing, and that we've developed with these various US states and also actually in Canada, and there are grants available, then you let us know and we can send you an email or point you in the right direction, either towards the state EDA or we have some things on our website that we can share with you. And again, thank you so much. You're really a great engaged audience. I'm loving it. Thank you very much indeed. And we will get back to you in due course for those who have said so. Okay, I'm going to close this poll now. Here we go, close, and hand back to Andrew, who's going to talk to us about international social media channels.
Yeah, thanks so much, Susanna. And today, we're going to be diving into the social media channels that we see on an international stage. With I guess the next few slides here, we'll be diving into what we see here in the U.S., but also on international platforms that we might not be familiar with. So here we see kind of a multitude of social media marketing channels. Some that we are familiar with. You'll see Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, LinkedIn, things like that. But there's also a few logos that I'm sure that some of you might not be familiar with, and we'll definitely be speaking to a little bit later, things like Baidu and WeChat there. We see a nice chart or map of the world here, and it really is dedicated to the #1 social media platforms around the world, and this is by country. So you'll see there's a lot of blue, and that means that Facebook is the #1 social media platform around the world. And for the majority of the countries. You also see a few different colors here. Notably in Iran and in Japan, Instagram is actually the #1 social media platform. And also in China, you'll see WeChat. So WeChat's something that we haven't spoken to yet, but that is the #1 social media platform within that country. So it's impossible, just on very broad spectrum, and it's impossible to go to the Chinese market with things like Facebook and things like Instagram and LinkedIn as we know it. So they have their own platforms. Here we'll take another view at some of the most popular around the world. Facebook, as we saw on the last map, is number one with 2.9 active monthly users. These are all up-to-date numbers as of 2022, just a few months ago. As we got on the list, you'll see, things that we're familiar with: YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram. Things in China, you get to WeChat. You'll see Douyin there, which is the Chinese version of WeChat. You'll see, and then the rest of the list there is ultimately things that aren't really relevant to our audience, but there are quite a few individuals that are online. QQ has 574 million individuals. Sina Weibo, you'll see Telegram there, you'll see, Reddit, 430 million users, and this is all worldwide. So even though it's not, these platforms might not be relevant to the US audience, it might be relevant to your audience that you have abroad. And now we can just kind of dive into some of the most well-known platforms and how they might be relevant to to leveraging the right platform in the U.S. and also internationally. You may have heard of this company here, Facebook. You might have heard of the adage that if Facebook were a country, it would be the largest on earth because of the amount of users that they have. They have 2.45 billion users, and it's even more than what China has as a country with 1.4 billion. But just to think about the potential of your video reach here, with 2.45 billion individuals that are constantly on Facebook and not only for their personal profiles but also for their business. Not to mention that Facebook is also available in 101 different languages. We saw a really nice example above of our case study, Advanced Super Abrasives, who utilized Facebook, but also for Mexico. So everything was obviously translated to Mexican Spanish, but they had a dedicated Mexico web page. So it was for the Mexican audience in Facebook, and it made sure that it was in front of that audience. Millions of companies use Facebook to share organic news, events, share content, talk to customers, and ultimately the advertising tools become pretty handy. They're some of the best to target your ideal buyer, their groups, and an excellent way to build a captive audience. So which in many ways this may prove as more fruitful than some of your other platforms or ways of reaching out to your customers. For example, being in person or other I guess traditional marketing methods. So Facebook remains to be one of the most important platforms and definitely needs to be a part of your social media strategy if it's not already. Ultimately videos are a big driving point. So alongside Facebook, we also can talk about YouTube. YouTube is the second largest social media platform around the world, and obviously YouTube is driven strictly through videos. But uniquely, YouTube is also treated as a search engine. So whenever people are looking at certain B2B services and products, YouTube is a great way to reach your audience. So it's the second largest search engine. About 80% of the views are outside of the US, actually. It's available in 91 countries, 76 languages, and only, it's an interesting number here to note, 9% of US small businesses use and leverage YouTube. Google reports that 6 out of 10 people prefer online video platforms to online TV. And for a company to succeed, it's actually more tangible and more beneficial to leverage things like social media and YouTube, as opposed to spending money on TV advertisements and commercials. And then we can talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great platform, and it as you see on the chart on the right, it's the #1 platform for lead generation, as opposed to Facebook and Twitter, and by 3 times the amount. Obviously, I imagine all of you might have even seen this webinar being promoted on LinkedIn because of your business profiles, your business accounts, and your ability to connect with individuals by LinkedIn. 70% of the users on LinkedIn are actually outside of the US. So again, it speaks to the amount of global reach that you're able to have. Some of the largest users, however, are in the US. It's in India, in China, in Brazil, in the UK, and also in France. And lastly, we can just speak on Instagram. Instagram is, again, content-driven platform with 1 billion active users. Can be a great platform for things like B2B. They have 3 different methods of reaching out to their audiences, which have changed. Most recently, IGTV is now offline. But they've kind of transitioned into to their Reels factor. So they have the feed, they have stories, and they have the Reels, which is practically a TikTok feature on Instagram. But more or less, it's short videos, it's short pictures, it's short content, and it's able to describe, exactly what your business service or what your business product may be able to convey to those users that are on that platform. And yeah, and so in the last one here, we'll speak to China, because China really is its own environment. As noted above, they're not using the same social media platforms as us, but they are using their own that they've created. So you'll see a list here of things like Youku, Weibo, WeChat, Tencent, Bilibili, Douyin. These are all things that aren't really relevant to us, and we might not even get a view to how they're used. But they're very, very relevant to your Chinese audience. So for many of you out there, and I know that there are, that leverage the online audience for your business and continue to export to China, these are platforms that you need to become aware of, and to be able to grow your exports through a social media strategy using some of these platforms. It's certainly something that is going to be growing in importance, because I don't think China will be changing its procedures anytime soon as far as their firewall there. So, WeChat, Youku, Bilibili, Douyin, Weibo. These are all things that need to be taken into consideration, especially when you're doing business in China. But with that, I'll pass it over to Joelle, who's going to be talking about some of these social media strategies that we see on a global stage.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. And yes, apologies for the little glitch with the slides, but we're back on. So fantastic. Excellent. I just wanted to, if my mouse plays, there we go. So before we dive into, again, looking at the strategies, I wanted to start maybe the other way around as we usually do it, but start from some case studies that then we'll kind of wrap everything that Suzanne and Andrew have discussed together with the next portion of the webinar. So just a couple of examples, again, tying into the great example Andrew brought us from Advanced Super Abrasive, where they were using a combination of, this metaverse, so WhatsApp, WeChat, to generate leads on social media directly. So here we have another example for a company called WDM USA, and so they are a leading provider of continuous friction pavement management surveying. So it's very B2B, very specific. They have their buyer persona very clearly defined, and we know that they engage on LinkedIn. We're talking to engineers, we're talking to people in the the transport industry, safety industry. So the way they're leveraging social media here is just, I just wanted to show you that, LinkedIn, because it's B2B, doesn't need to be just flat and just words. They have some very good videos just showcasing the kind of surveying they do, the vehicles, that they're out on the road. And this is very much a great way for them to get engagement on the page, to share more about what they're doing with the audiences. And also this highlights the importance of the work that they're doing in saving lives across US roads. And another example here of maybe this time we've picked Facebook as something that's a little bit more familiar. And here we have a company, AMSOIL. They're a leading manufacturer of synthetic engine oils. And although they have a strong B2B presence, they're selling to direct consumers. Part of a social media strategy that we've helped them develop very much focuses on distributor acquisition. So that's that little bit of a B2B that I wanted to highlight here. So here we've got some examples, and if I can play the videos again for you guys, is just a strong example of their Latin American presence. And here, they're leveraging videos. They really use social media to grow that brand recognition, to grow that brand trust, which has led to customer wanting the product. And this has helped us in our lead generation for distributor acquisition, because we get more distributors in the Latin American market are going onto Facebook to do their research. They're seeing how well the brand is being perceived, and they want to become, part of the game. So this is just two very different examples of how social media can be used on a B2B basis, but also B2C, to gain engagement, brand trust, but also to, you know, become part of that very important conversation that goes on in any industry. As Andrew and Susanna highlighted, people are on social media. Your buyer persona is on social media. It's just a matter of engaging with them the way they want to be engaged on the platform they're currently engaging on. So diving into the strategies around international social media marketing, or domestic as well, you know, we can talk about, you know, in the US, in Canada, but also here I've got an example in France and in Brazil. What is likely to look like is that you have as a starting point your domestic social media presence if you are already active, but then you will see that even on social media, like we discussed, if for those of you who are familiar with website localization and maybe have been to some of our webinars, in the same way you would have a localized website for your target market, you will also need to start thinking about a localized social media presence. And why this is important? Well, the importance is very much in that native feeling, is making sure that your audiences can see your content and engage with it without having to think about it. If it's something that feels native, that feels natural to them, whether it's organic content or whether it's an ad, you will get very good opportunities to get engaged with them. And this is very, you know, very important in the facts of keywords, for example. So for an international market, something as simple as a word or a specific expression could make the difference on whether they engage with your post or they just scroll past. So here I just brought an example of campaigns that we ran in Brazil or in Portugal. We're writing in Portuguese, but if we were talking about the word train, for example, if we were in Brazil, we would make sure that we use the word trem over the word comboio, which is what you would use in Portugal if you were speaking Portuguese. And this just talks to, you know, search engines. For those of you familiar with SEO, that is the point of ranking higher and making sure that you find the right word. But this is just so important for social media to be able to you know, appear native, to make sure that your target audience will see that you're dedicated to the specific market, that you understand them. And then, you know, so different markets call for different posting, different geofencing, and really making sure that, you know, your native-like experience, you will increase engagement, but also boost your brand lift as users won't think of you as like, you know, an exporter trying to translate something into Portuguese, but very much dedicated to that specific market. So language is very important. But another thing that you need to make sure that you really get a very clear idea and you get aligned before you start doing anything on your marketing strategy, especially on social media. A very, very good piece of your strategy will be knowing what you're trying to achieve. So setting your goals, aligning your social strategy to your business objectives. So when you design your, you know, your big marketing plan, the very, very first step is always to make sure that you're aligned with your overall business metrics. Knowing what you're trying to achieve on social media or any other platform will allow you to measure return on investment, to measure results, and then to really see what is working and what's not working for you. And this will also then allow you to gather the right data and make sure that you're always focusing on what makes the most sense for your brand, for your business at that specific point in time. So here I've just brought a couple of examples. This comes again from Facebook campaigns. And I just wanted to show you how one single platform already can be broken down into different business objectives, which then would lead to you trying to reach different social media goals. So whether it's awareness, engagement, conversion, you want to get consumer buy-in, and then how you measure them. So if you want awareness, then you want to grow your followers. If you want engagement, you'll be looking at your likes and your shares. If you want conversion, then you'll be looking at how many people visit your website and how many leads, and so on and so forth. So again, the word, you know, setting goals, smart goals can be a little bit daunting, but it's just making sure that before you do anything, you know what you're trying to achieve, and you'll be able to then set yourself some very clear KPIs that are going to allow you to measure success. You know, once your objectives are set, then you will know how to measure it and you will know what success looks like for you. So before we launch and before we go into any paid or organic social media, we always recommend define your goals, choose your metrics, analyze, and keep going. So things will take a little while, things will change, don't stop, keep going, keep measuring your metrics, keep reviewing your KPIs, and then you know, you can make the changes in your optimization as you best see. Perfect. So before we dive into, the details of the different platforms and how to use them, I just wanted to step back and just remind ourselves, we talk a lot about organic social media versus paid social media. What does that mean? So organic is what's mostly described as unpaid. And this goes for search engine optimization, so the traffic that gets to your website, but also social media posting. So that is the long-term source of traffic, of engagement, of authority, of relevance. So this really means having a ongoing content plan, as Susanna mentioned, that mapping of the content and sharing that on social media, making sure that when people go to your page to find out more about your brand, whether they found you organically or whether they find you via paid advertising, they have enough content for them to get an idea of who you are, what you stand for, what kind of products you promote. So mixing the content and posting it organically and maintaining that organic presence is very important. And here I just wanted to show you some data over the past 12 months. Organic social media platforms have been mostly used by B2B marketers are, without a big surprise, LinkedIn leads the table. We've seen how LinkedIn can be used to share videos, blog information, promote your events. It's a fantastic platform for B2B, and it's no longer just that, networking or looking for the next opportunity. There is a lot of great content that is shared on a daily basis on LinkedIn. But Twitter and Facebook follow suit quite closely, as those are all really good platforms where people engage. And sometimes it doesn't matter whether it's B2B or B2C. People engage. We're always talking to people at the end of the day. So it's really good to see a number of platforms used to share new content. But also we have YouTube and Instagram, again, part of the Google and Meta family, that really allow in different ways to share the same ideas, the same messages. As Susanna mentioned, if you have great content on your website, then you can repurpose that for LinkedIn. You can have a longer blog on LinkedIn, and there may be a short video on Instagram and a longer video on YouTube. So very much understanding where your audience is will allow you to pick the best channel mix for your brand to engage on. And then we move on to the paid social media marketing, which is the part that sometimes, I know that a lot of you will be like, is this for me? Should I be spending, money on pushing my content out? Should I be focusing on something else? I'm a strong believer that, allowing the platforms to help you reach your target audience is key to a very well organized and successful social media strategy. And this is simply because every audience have their own specific targets. You have your own buyer persona that you will have defined. You know what the buyer journey looks like. So by leveraging paid social media, for example, on LinkedIn, you can then choose, you can target users by job title, by where they're based, by what kind of education they have, what other member groups they're following, whether they're a member of a specific organization. You can really make sure that your content that you spend so much time curating, creating, and posting really reaches a wide audience that is targeted to your business. So paid social media gives you a fantastic opportunity domestically, but more so internationally when you're entering a new market, to really make sure that you don't just use a scattergun approach and go out to everyone hoping that someone will engage, but you can go very much laser focused and choose the audience you want to be in front of, engage with them, and then get that return and start building the trust and those conversations, maybe back onto your website or directly on LinkedIn or Facebook, if that's the case. And here again, the same idea, the same table we've looked at earlier, but here we're looking at paid social media platforms. And again, I'm not surprised to see LinkedIn and Facebook leading, simply because of how targeted and how sophisticated they have gotten over the past few years in allowing marketeers, in allowing brand, really allowing anyone to really be a player in the social media field. If you think about with a few dollars on LinkedIn and Facebook, you could be showcasing your brand alongside, much bigger brands. You could have now I'm thinking L'Oreal because of the example Susanna shared earlier. You can have L'Oreal marketing to the customer because they match their audience in a specific way, but then your ad could be right next to it because the same user actually is within your target persona as well. So it really allows every brand, is really kind of leveling the playing field, social media and the targeting options that we have. And I think it's a fantastic and a very exciting time for B2B to enter and really make the most of social media marketing, because There are so many different ways that this can be used to meet each of those specific targets that I've showed you earlier. So depending on where you feel you are in your market entry, in your social media building, in your community building on social media, don't discount the power of paid marketing, because that can really help you grow not just your traffic, your engagement, but also your lead generation, your sales through to your website, whatever conversion matters to you. But don't forget that I mentioned audience and I mentioned community. Don't forget your organic side of things. So social media is a fantastic way and platforms to push your content, your brand out. But do remember that then people will respond. And to make sure that you make the most of your social media strategy, build that relationship. So if someone comments, mentions you in a post, clicks on one of your posts, asks you for a connection, listen, respond, get back to them, send them more information, point them into the right direction, build a relationship, engage with your audience, because that's going to be a very, very big piece of that brand trust building, and then making sure that when they come back, when they're ready at the end of their buyer's journey, they have chosen you because they trust you, they've learned about you, and they want to do business with you. So social media can also help in building that that relationship that will be key in the decision-making process at the end. Conscious of time as well, and I know that we've got a couple of takeaway, and I'll hand over to Susanna and Andrew in a moment, but I just wanted to maybe just quickly reiterate and outline a few best practices for you to follow, whether you're looking at starting or enhancing your social media marketing. Have a localized website to act as your local springboard. If you're doing international marketing, if you're going social media internationally, make sure that if you're doing marketing in Mexico on a dedicated Mexican page, when the user is directed back to your website, that user experience is maintained, so you have a localized website for them to engage with and continue their education or their learning experience about your brand. Get to know your audience. It's going to be difficult to choose the right content and the right platform without knowing who your buyer persona is and what the buyer's journey look like. So do your research before you get started. Set your goals. I know that this is sometimes the most difficult, saying, well, if I haven't got any data, how do I set some goals? Set some initial goals, set some initial KPIs. This will evolve. They should evolve with your social media strategy, but knowing what you're trying to achieve at the beginning is going to help you evolve them and learn from it. Choose which platform are worth your resources. Andrew's giving us a fantastic overview of a number of social media platforms, but this doesn't mean that everyone is ready to just launch across 5 different platforms. Choose the one that makes the most sense to your buyer persona. Start from there and build it out slowly over time. That will allow you to have the right resources in the right place, learn from it, and then diversify your content as well. As I said, answer all comments and mentions, engage with your audience, engage with your community. Look, analyze, keep learning, and don't stop. If things don't happen at the first time around, if you need to try a couple of iterations of the imagery, if one of the ads maybe it wasn't quite tailored to your audience, don't stop. Keep going, keep analyzing, keep reviewing your goals, and then we look forward to hearing your social media successes.
Terrific. Joelle, before we sort of finish up on the takeaways and get around to questions, the last poll, I just wanted to ask if anyone is still hungry to know more about the online marketing, and if you have an interest in learning more about these online global programs, the grants that can be available as well. Do you want to learn more about the online marketing? And we have a little survey actually at the very end, and you're welcome to put in, if there's a particular type of marketing that you're interested in. Are you more interested in the social media or the paid or the SEO? Where are you looking to do that? And again, thank you very, very much. We'll circle back to you for those people who got. And yeah, again, you're great at clicking those things. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Right. Okay. That's now closed. There's a couple of sort of takeaways. The big next steps. So the takeaways that we like to have. I guess from our point of view, even before we even get to these 3 quick steps, I would refer back to Andrew's presentation in the beginning there, the big picture side. So we're nearly 8 billion on the planet, 4.5, 4.6, what is it? Over nearly 5 billion of us on the internet, 4.5 billion on social media. That's good news for you. You know where your clients are, you know where your prospects are, you know how to reach them. Get yourselves an international, localized website if you want to do international business. That allows you to act as a springboard for communicating to your international prospective buyers. Figure out your ideal social media platform, the resource that has the lowest hanging fruit for you. Where are you going to get the best ROI? And focus. Don't spread yourself too thin. Just bite off what you can chew to start with. Map out that social media strategy from the buyer persona, the buyer journey, the content mapping, and as Joelle said, the whole thing coming together, the mix between the organic and the paid for that. And as Joelle and her marketing team always talk about, it's the analytics that count in the end. So we, and as I said, we do have these online global programs, which we are really, are designed for the international exporter. So now let's get to some questions. So these are the online global programs again across these states. And actually, this is quite good to just keep on for a second. Andrew, one of the first, actually, there's 2 questions that have come in about the online global programs. The first is, where do you start? And the second, related to that, is, do I just call you up? Do I call up the state? Andrew, this one's for you.
Yeah, those are two good questions in reference to the online global programs and also the states. Yeah, the states that we have highlighted here are states that we have partnerships with and have contacts within those states. So if you do live in one of those, I certainly recommend that you get in contact with these state agencies. Obviously, the online global programs that we provide for website localization and marketing activities are funded by funded by grants, and many of these states are made available to U.S. exporters and U.S. companies to help fund for activities like this. So yeah, definitely get in contact. If you don't know your state representative or if you don't have one yet, feel free to contact us. We'd be happy to put you in the right direction. But otherwise, if you do, please start with them, and they're certainly going to point you in the right direction as well.
Okay, and Joelle, one for you as well about sort of what are the hot latest trends that you're seeing in the online marketing side? What are the I mean, you can do a whole webinar just on that, but just in 30 seconds, what are the top trends?
I think we do actually, and thank you, Susanna. That's a great question. I think we do have a webinar on some of these elements. I think the most obvious that has come end of 2021, beginning of this year is video. Video is taking over whatever platform. So video engagement, video, client testimonials, user-generated content. So it is a lot of moving a little bit beyond the brand, moving beyond just showcasing what the product is, but again, for manufacturers, going into showing the manufacturing. It used to be kept hidden. You just want to see the final product, but sharing a little bit of that behind the scene, having little videos about your products, client testimonial, get people that are using your product to generate content for you. I think, as I mentioned, a lot of users are now using social media for validation. They're going to see what the brand is all about. There is a lot of talk about sustainability, about what the brands are doing. So use social media to build, what maybe isn't on your website. That behind the scene, that personality of the brand is something that we're seeing, more and more across a number of social media channels globally, really.
Okay, thank you, Joelle. Another quick one also for you about privacy, and particularly about the changes for Apple and what that means for cookies and what that means for advertisers and marketeers.
What that meant was a big headache when it all was released, but the main changes that Apple and the iOS updates is basically meaning that marketeers and advertisers have access to less pixel or remarketing data. So when 2 years ago we were able to show an ad to anyone that had been on our website, now that's becoming a little bit more difficult. And I think it's good for the users, is just making sure that they opt in, they have more control over what they see. And this is just meant for marketeers that content has never been so important. High quality content that engages them to the point where they want to give you their real information. They want you to get in touch with them. So if you have to invest on content, very much 22 is going to be the year of quality over quantity. You know, that might be a personal opinion, but I think that's what we've seen working best over the past few months.
Thanks, and perhaps just the last one, if we can squeeze it in, just squeeze under the hour. Andrew, just maybe for you, sort of the role of distributors. There's two questions combined again, or a couple of different questions coming in about distributors, the roles of in-market partners. How do I leverage them? Do I piggyback their social media? Do they have a role to play? Andrew, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I mean it's a very common question, so I understand why it was asked. It's something that you know, a lot of our B2B partners are looking to nurture their distributors there. It's really dependent on the relationship you have with distributors. For many of our clients, they might be indirect relationships, so the distributors are kind of doing their own promotions, they've got other things to sell at the same point, and so at that point, you know, we definitely recommend having your own social media strategy, but to be supportive of their social media strategies there. You know, there's ways that you can incorporate their promotions into your platforms, and also include them with your international strategies. For those that are direct, of course, you know, they are going to be very collaborative in your promotional processes, and in fact could be running social media platforms that you give to them. But obviously, you want the brand awareness, you want the leads generated going back to your company at the end of the day. So social media is a great way to, you know, connect and collaborate with your distributors in other markets.
Thank you very much indeed. Fine balancing that relationship with distributors and things, but making sure it's your own brand. We're cutting it fine. I think we thank you all very, very much. I want to say a big thank you to Andrew for presenting all that. It was fantastic. And Joelle, as always, you know, getting the right strategies, her insights into marketing and online marketing. And most of all, thank you all for attending. We know you're all zoomed out and things, so we do really appreciate that you attend these webinars, and we're really grateful for all your comments and things. Thank you all. And hope to see you online and offline all very, very soon. Thank you. We appreciate it. Bye-bye. Thank you.